The sophistication to inspire exhilaration. And the technology to customize every ride. Packaged to create a luxury ride like no other. Introducing the most premium personal watercraft on the market. The 2021 FX Series from Yamaha.
Morning. I'm in a much better mood today than I was yesterday when it was raining and we were doing my most favorite thing, camping in the rain. But it was all worthwhile. We've seen off hopefully the bad weather. Now we're going to hit the queue for the launch here. Life jacket, check. One packing system, check. And gloves, check. Check, how's this color coding? Huh? How's this? Look at it. Can't even tell the jacket from my fingers. Game plan today? Well, it would have been to be on a kayak, but my cameraman, my editor, my boss, Cameron, camera boss, he said no, I need to be on the boat.
This is my first time fishing in Cape Vidal and I'm very, very excited. I was holding back a bit because I was a bit nervous for the launch, but then I just said to myself, always say yes to new adventures and gonna go for it. And I'm hoping to catch a good game fish like a kuta or a tuna or maybe hopefully a prodigal son. So yeah, let's just see what the day holds and yes to new adventures.
We'll probably play it as we see what's happening out on the water. If there's bait and there's fish around nearby, well then we just fish close, because then you don't need to go far because the fish are here. So yeah, hopefully there's fish right here and then we can get some good action, get some good footage, and then hopefully I can get on the kayak this afternoon. I'll have to ask Cam's permission though, of course. Okay, thank you. I thought we were gonna go. Well done, BK. Shot, bro. Well done. Shot. Long time. Morning, welcome to Cape Vidal. What a cracker, hairy launch.
Good evening, guys, and welcome to this week's Go Fish Weekly Wrap-Up. We're all doing it from our relative houses. Currently, unfortunately, we couldn't all get together, but next week, or the next episode, hopefully we'll be able to get together at maybe somewhere like the Tel Powerboats and get a bit of chias going. But tonight we're going to be chatting a little bit about sort of what's been happening recently. Geez, this weather system that's just come through just when things were coming right has now properly buggered everything up. And then we're going to be chatting a little bit about the species that are in and around at the moment, together with some tips on the bottom fishing side from BK himself, expert in that arena as well as others. And so it's promising to be a really cool episode. We're on the downhill into summer now, chaps. Spring day, happy spring day, boys.
How's it, boys? How's it, Kirk?
What's happening? Cam on the other end, he's also unfortunately not feeding in from Toti, but he's making it all happen for us. So good evening to you as well, Cam, and good evening to everyone that's slowly coming on. Yeah, guys, thanks very much again for the support, and hopefully we can keep you guys interested. Please make sure to keep on asking questions throughout the show. That's what the show is all about, and even after the show, we'll also still tend to those questions. BK, hey, just when we thought things were starting to, it's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with this water and weather and whatnot, and then this bloody front comes through and annihilates everything.
Yeah, I mean, it's that time of the year. I suppose we're starting to get into that windy season. We always get one or two of those big fronts that come through. We were lucky. I think it was just sort of on the back of springs, so we didn't get as much damage as I think we would have got, if it had been right on springs. It was washing up right on when I was down at Mshlonga this morning, and it had washed up onto all those lower sections under the lifeguard tower in that area there, but not too much damage there, fortunately. But I did see on social media, obviously, Belito, some areas up there took a bit of a hiding. I'm sure Mshloti probably also felt it somewhere, and then also down the south coast. So, yeah, just unfortunate, man. Just because last weekend the fish really came on. I couldn't fish. I had more important things to do, like my 50th. Still trying to recover from that. So definitely feeling the age, but but the guys who did get out on the weekend seemed to get some nice fish. The game fish and bottom fish. So there was some dargers and Fjellbeck yellowtail on the bottom, and then there was some tuna around as well. So those tuna seem to be hanging around with the sods.
Yeah. Happy birthday for last weekend, BK. Big cover there.
Yeah, I know it was good. It was good. I remember it was quite good.
From what you remember, I think I think something that's really frustrating me, and I saw an oak on the beach the other day, and you were saying, these he's a ski boat fisherman down here at Warner's, and he was at he was on at Warner Beach where we were, and he was just saying, these laws with regards to these Ecoli levels. Now I can understand from a certain point with regards to swimmers and surfers and that sort of thing. This oak's a ski boat fisherman, and he's just saying it's so frustrating because, and I can understand why, because I'm also, but like in the same boat. I scheme, like I said to you earlier, I scheme the same oak that put these freaking COVID laws together, put these better E. coli laws in place at the moment. Because, I mean, the oaks are saying, well, if you're a ski boater, can't launch out of your designated launch site. It just doesn't make sense to me. You know what I mean? The oaks that are closer to the water, surfers, kayakers, swimmers, understandable. But oaks on motorized crafts and that sort of thing that aren't really normally supposed to get wet, should be allowed to launch and fish, because it's a lot of the oaks that are down here, probably commercials and commercials, but commercials that are relying on this to sort of put food on the table and pay bills and whatnot. They can't. The only launch site they've got is Umkomaas. They can't launch out of Umko and go and bottom fish and get their quotas, come back and sell and beach at Umko, because you're not allowed to beach at Umko with bottom fish. So they're in a bit stuffed with a fuel price as well. To travel to other launch sites that are open, I think it's strapping the oaks properly here.
Yeah, I think you've got to take things with a bit of a pinch of salt. So it's something sometimes we just don't seem to do in South Africa. We just go from one extreme to another. without
Yeah.
sort of thinking, or just having one or two conversations with people that are actually involved in the areas that are going to be affected, before these sort of rules and laws just get slapped on us. But yeah, look, I think it's sort of opening in Durban. I know Durban, the guys are, I think, are fishing again now at the harbour anyway. So yeah, but it's just an unfortunate thing. And I mean, and again, it just goes back, why are the eco limit levels where they are? And that's we'll have to put about 10 episodes through about that.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, yeah, back to fishing. I think, I mean, just if you look at the sods, I mean, they're pretty much hanging around, much like they did last year. Not beating as much. I mean, the netting hasn't been as much as what we saw last year, but certainly the levels of the shoal has been. They're still all over from Durban, and I think the guys even down South Coast, right up past Belito. So very much in that 30-40 meter line, and they're holding a bit of fish as well. So the guys are getting the tuna around that on those fish, and it'll only bode well for the game fish season coming, the summer game fish season again. I think we were teeing off nicely, and then we had the first sort of heavy rains and then the flooding, which sort of put an end to it. But I think it's going to set itself up again. Also, these rivers coming down are also a good thing. They bring a lot of small nutrients down, and then obviously that builds into the smaller congregations of bait fish and that, and then builds up. I mean, the same thing. We were catching cobia all of a sudden after those heavy rains, which we haven't caught for probably 10 or 20 years. So yeah, I think although it was coming right and we'd taken a little bit of a knockback, I think we're still going to be in for a goodie. I think the dollies will be here, and I think the kuta are going to come. And the snook have been around the whole time. So not all doom and gloom. I see Saturday, Sunday mornings looking quite good. So for those beaches that aren't closed, maybe the guys on the guys on the skis and that can move a little bit further north or south away from those zones, and I'm sure they'll come right. I'm sure we'll get a bit of fish. It's settling down. Generally, the fish will eat.
Yeah.
I think we've got 2-3 days where it settles. The sea's already flattened off a lot this afternoon, this morning. That easily sort of flattened it a bit. So yeah, I think it's going to be good.
Just touching on that, on when those sods are on that 40-meter line, BK, and you're seeing that because, I mean, like you say, we saw a lot of it here before the storms came through, sort of on that like 18 to 25 meter line, big shoals and out deep as well. So how are you, if you're going along on your ski boat or your kayak or whatnot, how are you fishing those shoals? I mean, what is the first thing? I mean, it's always worth it to sort of test out a shoal and see if there's anything around there. What's your game plan there when you see something like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is you want to try and get a couple of live baits out of it, So the Natal sods obviously don't eat the Azuris as much as your other bait fish, but they do confuse it and jump on. So especially if you go down to the smaller ones. So if you go to the tsunami jig with the red hooks, the smaller one, which normally works very well up in Vidal and Mozam. That you'll get a bit more of a strike rate. But if you persevere a bit just with your normal Yamashitas, you'll invariably get one or two that jump on in amongst if there's red eyes. But at the same time, you can pin a red eye. But I think that the way I'll generally fish it is I'll move up on one shoal and give it 5 minutes. Put a livey out around, because with so many shoals, obviously the fish are moving around as well. They're not just sitting with one. And just keep working your way up, So it's going to be sort of a process of elimination, and just keep putting a bait. A big thing about throwing baits also is to try and, without killing it, obviously, try and throw them a bit away from the boat and let it sort of splash when it hits the water as well. That's quite key. The guys sometimes just let it out the back on a slow trawl, but that splash often, just that one little splash, much like throwing a popper.
Yeah.
Fish are just it's something different and brings the fish up, and you can almost go on instantly. So that's just a little tip there, That's generally, it's a little bit of a hit and miss at the end of the day. But again, then when you do find them, they can start busting up on a shoal. If you're in the right place, you're going to go 3-4 sticks away if you've got the baits in the water. So
yeah,
you just got to persevere. But they were definitely there. They were starting to come quite nicely this last week. There were quite a few guys sort of consistently getting 1 or 2 fish in the week, and then even on the weekend,
Yeah.
At 4 knots.
I think, like, there's a I was chatting to the other day with regards to this time of year, and it's we know it as a bit of a tougher time of year. You know, I mean, obviously there's one or two species that have come on the bite now, but it's nothing. You know, there's sort of not really too much consistency with regards to species and what you're getting where and whatnot. You know, one day the snook can be on the back line at your local spot, and then the next day, you know, they're dead and the tuna are on. You know, so I mean, on the kayaks and that and the jet skis and boats and whatnot. But generally, I was chatting with the guy on the kayak, and I just said, look, you know, what I would be doing is probably getting, and what I should be doing is probably getting a bit more training in and covering water, right? So putting on, like, you know, obviously unless you're fishing for bottoms and you're specific with regards to going for darger and yellowtail and whatnot, then that's a different story. But if you are looking to get a game fish, covering as much water as possible is key. So you know, putting two of your favorite lures on, hitting a trawl up on the back line if you've heard that maybe there's one or two snook about, or timing it with maybe a low tide. So if it's high tide in the morning when you launch, maybe head out onto the deeper spots or your sort of inside reefs and that sort of thing. Work a couple of lures around there, and as soon as it starts switching and the tide switches, and you get that kind of sort of first 2 hours after the push, and now it's starting to suck a bit, you should be maybe moving onto the back lines where those garrick and those snook are going to be feeding. So just I know there's a couple of guys that are probably a bit confused as to what to do this time of year, and if you're not into your bottom fishing, just covering ground, covering water is key.
Yeah, and I think also don't kill yourself. I don't think it's the sort of time that you're going to be spending 5-6 hours in the water. I think accept that it's going to be a bit of hit and miss, and just plan for a short spurt. You know, so if you want to go out, give it an hour max and come back in. You know, I'm talking more about obviously the guys on skis and that. You know, so it's that time of the year you can hit a luck, but it's going to be a lot of 50-50. But I mean, getting into the bottom fishing, it's definitely seems to be coming right now, because it's predominantly sort of your early morning, late afternoon bites, and then obviously your evening or night bites that's happening. But there's been some good catches. There's been some dargers coming out and a lot of Hilbeck on the weekend, and then the yellowtail have been popping up all over the place. And that's another, you know, sign of a good season coming. You know, we haven't had tail for many years, and in the last sort of 3 or 4 years, we've definitely seen them coming back onto standard normal reefs. You know, it's not like secret spots, but you got to persevere for them. And then when you do get them, then they usually smash you up, so you don't get them out. You know, I was chatting to one of the guys earlier today. I mean, they had 9 pulls and they got 2 fish out, and they had some sore hands and knuckles. But that's, you know, that's what's great about game. It's a real challenge. You know, they've probably got a much better chance than what you have.
Geez, I think when we fished Transkei last year with Doug, we came onto one of those inside reefs just before we were about to come back in, and yes, I tell you, I think we were in probably about, I don't know, 20 meters of water, 24 meters, if that, maybe 18. And we put a cray tail down for a punsi and a live mackerel on the other hook. Yes, and we both got picked up by a tail, and we got our asses handed to us. Like, I've never been beaten like that, but like, I didn't even have a chance, bro. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. No, they're the bullies, boy. That's for sure, boy. They're the gangsters of the reef.
BK, just we're going to get into the bottom fishing side of things shortly, but just on just quickly, I just want to touch on while I'm remembering now. I mean, we often, when you're bottom fishing and you're going out for long periods of time, you've got that, like you say, those golden hours, sort of early morning, late evening, or late afternoon. But now you also pay close attention to the tides. So what, I mean, are you, obviously it's always in the back of your head, but how are you sort of saying, okay, right, there's a high tide coming, or there's a shift in tide coming? What makes you decide, okay, right, I'm going to be on this reef? Is it just for that high tide? Is it just sort of just on information that you've gathered maybe a couple of days leading up to the fish, or do you stick on the kind of the same reef that you're on at that stage? How are you planning yourself around those tides?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think when it comes to fishing, we all know that sort of intel is a key part of fishing. I mean, you know, if you just go and you think you just go and launch and catch fish, you know, you're probably not going to come right very often. So yeah, you've got to gather a little bit of intel about, you know, what's happening, sort of where it's happening. Is it north, south? Is it in the shallows, in the deep? What time of day you're fishing? As you said, you know, if you're fishing at night, it opens up a whole different set of reefs. But you know, if you're fishing in the day, it's more challenging, and also just depending on what you're targeting. And I mean, you know, most of the time when we're fishing, we're trying to catch, you know, big fish. You're trying to catch decent fish at the end of the day, you know. And anyone can go and catch, you know, a whole lot of small slinger at number one. But so what I find though from in my situation is that to me it just seems that the deeper reefs tend to work better on the turn of the low, and I'm talking about in the daytime. So in the daytime, and especially around that sort of 10, 11 o'clock, that sort of midday. So generally it's on springs, but it's but on the low tide. So I'll tend to try and be in the deep around that sort of time, and then be on one of those good reefs that you know where you can catch big fish. So it's a keelback reef generally, you know, or if you can possibly, you got maybe a cracker reef or along those lines. But I mean, it's generally keelback in the deeper water that you'd be looking for. So that turn of the low for me is quite important, and that's generally in the deep. Then when I say deep, I'm talking 42 fathoms, you know, 38 fathoms, you know, around the 75 to 80 meter line. And then coming in, then more on the turn of the high would be sort of in your 27 fathom line, you know, that 45 meter, 50 meter line running, you know, basically from the flats up through the middle reef, right up to Belito. You've got that line running there, and then the next line outside of it is sort of your next shelf, which has been formed over a million years, which also sit at, but that's sort of that next bay that starts that next shelf, and then you got your deeper shelf on the outside. So yeah, I mean, you know, it's not a guarantee. It's never a guarantee, because I mean, obviously there's other factors like current and wind and those sort of things that come into play as well. But generally, you know, if you're up in the deep there and you've got little or no current, or light north to south currents, you will generally get fish. Another key aspect is obviously bait. You know, if you're targeting the bigger fish, you know, you need to have bait. I mean, if you know, as soon as I've got 10 mackerel in the live bait, well, my whole mood changes. You know, it just opens it up that, you know, if the fish are there and they're not too keen, you know, you just got a better chance of getting the bigger fish, you know, on the mackerel. Not to say some days I've had where they won't touch a mackerel and they'll only eat a mozzie, or they'll only eat a cut dead mozzie, you know, or sards, or block baits, and, you know, cut baits, and that when you've got a live bait down and the beck will only eat a block and a cut bait, you know. So you've got to mix it up all the time, and I think that's the beauty of bottom fishing. I mean, it's like the same thing with game fishing. You want to change up, but bottom fish you can really change up, because, you know, you're coming up and down all the time. So I think that's sort of key. But I mean, there's so many factors and nuances to it. I mean, you've just got to also just go and do it, and it's like anything, you keep practicing. The more you practice, you know, the better you'll get it, and you'll start working it out for yourself as well. But I mean, that's key. I mean, anchoring also, you know, is a key part of it. You know, reading your sounder, and you just really, you know, we can show you sort of, you know, the basics, but until you're actually physically doing it yourself, you know, it's not going to come. You're gonna have to keep going but put yourself in the right place at the right time, and, you know, use your equipment as well. You know, look for the showings slightly, you know, off the reef as well, sitting like if you've got a big bait showing sitting on top of the reef on the pinnacle, or it's a pinnacle on a ledge, and that, you know, always go sort of maybe 50, 100 meters outside of the ledge, and just see if there's any showing out there, because invariably during the day the bigger fish will move off onto the sand, and they'll be sitting there off the ledge in the slightly deeper water, and, you know, you end up coming and anchoring right on top of the pinnacle, which has got like baits and probably small slingers and reds and that sort of thing on it. You know, unless they start swooping in, you're just not going to get the bites. Often anchored slightly on the outside, and then you end up getting a couple of fish there. So not too far away from the ledge, but you be in the mix, and then obviously you got rock cod and that you can be getting on the deep side of the ledge, and cracking, and those sort of things will come in there as well.
Yeah. Before we get into the rig quickly, something that's really important at the moment is obviously fuel and the economy of motors and whatnot. Obviously Suzuki comes in there with their lean burn technology. You're traveling a hell of a lot of distance or long distances. I know, yes, but when I've been on the boat with you, you're not scared to travel, and you definitely do put a bit of miles on getting to those outside reefs on the motors. Currently, I mean, do you have any idea with regards to sort of your averaging on a tank there at BK with those Suzuki that you've got on there on your Tom?
Yeah, I think, I mean, the 4-stroke offering, and especially by Suzuki, has opened up a whole lot of fishing grounds as well, because back in the day we'd just be pinned, by sort of the fuel that you could take on the boat. I mean, we get about 28 k's on a 2-stroke, on a boat. So I'm running 280 Suzukis on lean burns now. They're about 3.5 years old. They've got about 2,000 hours on them, coming on 2,000 hours. And I'm getting probably around about 60 k's a tank. So yeah, 225-liter tanks, so 50 liters, 60 k's. You're getting about 1.2 kilometers a liter. So when we start putting that back to a car, where you're getting sort of like 10 k's to a liter. Yeah, it's an intensive sport, but yeah, they're very economical. I mean, it's 19-foot Tom is a big boat. It's not a small boat, but there's plenty meat. The gearbox on it as well, the transfer, they've got it right. So out the hole, I mean, I'm running 19 pitch on a 19-foot Tom, and the standards are 17. So, those are speed props, not power props, and there's plenty power in the surf. So, yeah, just that size of motor from the 70 up to the 100, it's that's all the same block, so the weight of the motor is the same. They spec'd up, so it's really for the boating that we do on the Natal coast. The majority of guys, there's definitely there's a setup for every one of those across those sizes, and that's why I'm saying in 80 you can run at 80, 90, 100. Doesn't make a difference because the weight's the same. So, but I'm very happy with them, and I think that sort of mileage, I think, is if I chat to a lot of guys, I mean, there's nothing wrong getting that mileage. I know my brother-in-law's got the 90s on a 21, and he's getting about 75 k's.
Sure.
Another mate of mine's got 270s on, also on a 21, and he also gets about 75 to 80 k's. So on a 21, but they are light boats, but it's very, very good mileage. If you're not running far, it means you're fishing a day on 1.5 maybe tanks, which a lot better than 4 tanks.
And just touching on Suzuki, the suggested retail pricing includes all the standard accessories needed to install that motor. So from props to control boxes and gauges and whatnot. So just keep that in mind when you are in the market for your next motor. That standard pricing from Suzuki includes all those standard accessories. BK, going into the outfit, we've got a question here from one of the guys with regards to a bottom trace. What is the best bottom trace? I think that's definitely one of the things we're gonna cover. Can we cover the sort of rod and reel, like a nice all-round rod and reel, just to start, and sort of what braid you're using, leader, whatnot, just to sort of if an oak's wanting to get into the bottom fishing side of things, he's wanting to target his beck and his darger, and sort of just have a bit of a shot at landing one of those.
Yeah, so guys, I can really say, I mean, at the end of the day, this is one case where heavier is not better. Trust me. If you're fishing all day, the last thing you want to do is be fishing with a heavy stick, and trying to catch some sort of medium size fish. So I fish with a rod. It's a 250 stroke 7. So it's a little bit difficult to show you, but anyway. 250 stroke 7, which is the blank. So Kingfisher make it. It's Poseidon. They'll import it and they'll make it for you. The guys call it all different names, whether it's Cape ski or tuna ski or whatever it might be. But anyway, it's a 250/7 blank, and Kingfish will get in. So 250 means it's 2.5 meters, and I think that's crucial. So I would not go for a rod longer than sort of 2.5 meters. So that's the standard setup I've got. I've got light guards on it. The guys like to put heavy guards on their rod. It does change the action of the rod. So I mean, anytime you need to have heavy guards, if you're lying on the deck and stamping around with boots on, that you're standing on the eyes and breaking them. I very seldom have to change his eyes. This rod, I've got 2 blanks. This is actually my dad's rod. So this rod's probably about 18 years old now. So it's still going. And then I'm fortunate. I've got a 10-inch cut down, so it's a little bit bigger. But I would just say standard 9-inch is 100% to start with. But if you can't get this rod, I mean, Kings make it up.
That's a 9-inch for the Oaks. 9-inch. He's talking about the real size. Yeah.
Standard 9-inch size Scarborough. You can go for the plastic or the wood if you like. It's no big difference. But that's honestly I look at it. And why I'm talking about the length of the rod is because the longer the rod, the further the bend is away from you. So which means the longer you're fishing during the day, the rod's bending further away from you. It's putting more lean on you and more pressure on your back, and it's going to make you tired. So the 2.5, I find the bend in the rod is closer to your body. So when it bends, it's bending over here. It's not bending far away from you. And it's got a nice soft tip. So the bend even comes closer into you with the rod. So when you're holding the rod in front of you and it's bending, the bend is almost about a foot to a foot away from where your hand is at the end of the grip. And it means you've got more control of the rod. It's closer to you, got more power that you can put into it. And then it's got a nice soft tip as well. So fishing with braid, you want that bit of give, because if you enter a tail or a cracker or a big dogger that's going to force you to backwind or even get your hand off the reel and give it line, you want that soft tip so that as he goes down like that, it gives you enough time for you to slip your hand off the handles and around the back of the reel to break it, to give him a smooth go, that you're not trying to backwind and you pull the hook out to rip the hook out or part something off. So yeah, I really would just say try and get that length is vital. 2.5 meters. I wouldn't go longer than that.
And line, what are you looking at rigging that with?
So I look a lot at the whole reason for fishing with braid is that it's less resistant in current. So there's no point in going in and putting on a 120-pound braid, jigging braid, and then you're getting dragged out behind the boat when the current's going. So it defeats the object. So I'll fish 80-pound. On that rod, you cannot break 80-pound. You'll break the rod first. So as long as you don't straight stick, you will not be able to break the 80-pound. Unless one of your knots are good. But so 80-pound. I'll look at diameter. So I'll honestly try and get the thinnest diameter 80-pound that I can find on the market. And there's a good few of them around. So just look at whatever your preference is, but look at the diameter of the 80-pound braid and try and get the thinnest that you can get. And what I'll do then is I'll generally on top of that I'll fish. I just use normal Kingfisher, your Kingfisher snooting. I use 38 kilo, which is also 80-pound or 85-pound.
What knot are you using from your braid to?
I'll do an FG.
Okay.
So I'll do a straight FG on from braid onto my nylon, but then I'll put quite a long leader on. So I'll put probably at least 10 meters of leader on, and that just gives you that little bit of stretch, a little bit of give. And then obviously, if you're onto a fish you're fishing on big structure, also allows you that if the fish is down and trying to get you in the bricks and there's a big pinnacle next to it, this is quite abrasion resistant. You can get quite a bit of rub on it before it parts. Versus if it's your braid and you've got a short leader, or you've tied straight onto the trace, that braid's just going to touch the brick and it's gone. So that's quite a key thing, is to put quite a long leader on. Like I said, I'll push at least 10 meters of leader on. It's quite nice as well, because when it comes to the eye, you know how much longer you have to crank.
Especially in
How
100
much
meters.
time is left? How much time is left before you...
if you make it up from 100 meters, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's the top. So, I mean, you know, literally, you can go bottom fishing with like a handful of stuff, which is very different to when you're going game fishing. You know, you've got to have like 50,000 different things in your box. Talking about, there was a question about the trace. What's the best bottom trace? You know, it's really where you're fishing and what you're targeting at the end of the day. And like I say, we generally fish big fish. You know, we're trying to catch good fish. You know, not quantity, rather quality. So we'll normally I'll fish a standard, normally a 2-hook trace. So starting with like your keelback trace, I can make one up quickly. So I'll use these those Kingfisher crane combi swivels. I just find that they don't twist as much as your normal 3-way swivel.
What size
so
are those?
that's a 3.0 by 2.0. So quite big ones. I think just find the bigger ones as well. You know, they just keep the line away from each other, so your hook snooting away from your main line or from your snooting that's going to the next. So I'll just start with that, and obviously, I know some guys might think I'm being funny, but not really. That's the top. The swivel sits on the top. That side one is going to your first hook snooting, and your vertical goes down, but that swivel's on the top, so it doesn't sit that way. It sits like that. So that sits on the top. That's going to your first hook. And if I'm fishing for beck, your hook snooting is slightly shorter. So I'll just do a straight. I'll do a three loop figure of 8. Just 3 times round. Back out the rabbit hole. I mean, I don't have any failure with this, but whatever your favorite knot is, just make sure it's lying nicely. Figure of 8. Just wet it up a bit.
Because I see you're not using any glasses there, bro. This is what happened. 50 brought your eyes right there. What?
Only for long distance. only for skippering. So if you see I'm not wearing it in the surf, be worried.
Yeah, make sure you're not on the boat. Yeah, or in the lineup.
Yeah, and just make sure you cut your tag ends quite short. You don't want like a big tag end sticking out in the line. That's it, but also leave a little bit, because if you do get stuck into the big fish, there can be a bit of slip. But generally, just pull that thing up nice and tight. And then from a snooting length point of view, so I'll go from my shoulder to the end of my hand. So across my chest from my shoulder. So it's probably in length-wise, probably about near a meter. Probably about 900 to a meter. So that'll be
someone like Brendan. He's probably going to have to do his whole.
Yeah, you'll have to go right across.
Yeah.
So yeah, should be about 800. Yeah, then I'll just leave a little bit for the knot. Take a little bit off the knot, and then on my top hook, depending again on sort of what the fishing and intel is. I mean, if we're going to a spot where we're pretty certain we're going to get beck, keelback, then automatically I'll fish a 9.0. I'll go straight to a 9.0 Kendall, mustard Kendall 9.0, and it'll be my top hook and it'll be my bottom hook, because that's again personal preference. Just my hook operates quite good on that. And then what I'll do is I'll just offset it. So I'll just take the long nose. I'll just grab the hook and just bend it slightly off center. So that hook now is slightly off to the side.
Okay.
And again, I've just found it just gives you, if you think about it, getting pulled through they suck bait in. They don't come in. They will mouth bait, but invariably they'll just suck it in. So as you're pulling the hook out, you want that hook slightly offset so it's got a chance to purchase on something as it's coming out his mouth. So offset on that, and then also on my top, I'll fish a Yamashita glow skirt. Guys, don't go cheap. Buy the Yamashita.
What size is it? Is it the 5-inch?
It's the big one, yeah. The 3.5. So it's the size 3.5. But honestly, guys, there's a whole lot of others out there, and yeah, they do work in that. But a lot of times, you know, the fish comes back and eats this, because I will generally fish I'll fish a sard on the top hook. So I'll fish a sard with this on the top hook. So again, just your nano going on there.
And you're just putting that sard through the bottom and top jaw, eh? Just letting him
through
dangle.
the bottom and
Yeah.
making closest for the weekend. So again there, and then that's going to sit. I'll just trim that off, and then that's going to be sitting on top of your hook like that. Some of the guys like to put a bead in behind it as well, so they'll put a big bead on first behind this, and then force the Yamashita over it, just to try and keep it sitting down on the hook. I don't have too many issues with that, but so that would be my top bait, and that would generally, I'll fish maybe a piece of chocker with a whole sard, but I'll start fishing with a whole sard there all the time, just because, as I said earlier, a lot of times you'll get the beck, they'll try a sard before they'll try live baits. And also what you're doing is, this is slightly higher, this will be your higher up hook. So if there's yellowtail in the area, they tend to be up a little bit higher. So early morning, late afternoon, and nighttime, I'm going to fish with a much longer trace in between. So my snooting from my top swivel, still have my hooks line is still the 1 meter, but now my snooting in between, this is all your 85 pound going on here. So as I said, now that's how your swivel sits. Swivel's above, your hook swivel sits on the top, and then you're just going to go through the bottom one here, and this is going to go to your next swivel, which will be your hook that's going on the bottom. So again, just do a figure of 8, 3 trips around, wet it up, got nice and tight, hook that off. Okay, now my length here, as I said, this will be more of a early morning, late afternoon, or night. I'm going to go right across my chest. So I'm going from my full extended left to my full extended right, and I'm going to take a little bit more. So I'm going to go right across. That's probably about 1.5 meters, and then I'll take probably another 100, 200. So that'll be my length now. So I'm fishing quite a distance from the top hook to the next swivel. Again, going in the top of the swivel with the hook and swivel on the top, and the top there, and then I'm going to go to the second hook, which now, again, so talking about where you're fishing, what you're fishing for, is early morning, again, early morning, early evening, or late afternoon into the night. Generally start also with a long sinker then as well. So my sinker, again, will be full length across the body. Again, so my whole trace is extended now. You got a long sinker, and then another long, so now you're fishing, your top hook is at least probably nearly 3.5 meters off the bottom. Yeah. Your tail on that will be even higher than that. So if you look at some of the other guys who are in the know, I mean, look at the Barthos and the guys down the coast, and that they'll fish with like a 4-5 meter long sinker, and fish possibly then one hook. So for yellowtail, they can be spooky when they want to be. So there again, now they will be sitting as high as 10 meters, even 15 meters up at the bottom. So, when you're sounding around and you're seeing the bait showings on the bottom, if you're seeing those sort of like red blobs, slightly compacted, but higher up, it's sort of like that 10, 15 meter mark. Don't be that's a good chance it could be tail. Also, slinger will also stack up, but slinger will be sort of more compacted together, so you'll see it smaller fish. But you'll see the bigger fish sitting up above that, and that can be tail. So I mean, again, it's no point going down gonk and you're at the bottom and you're holding the pole on the bottom, and those fish are sort of 10, 15 meters up. So at least have one guy mixing it up on the boat. That's key as well when you're fishing bottom. Don't all go down with the same trace and the same bait. Mix it up. Like we'll generally have one person fishing with this sort of a trace set up with like a two hook trace. So again, if I do my sinker, let me just finish this trace. I do my sinker. So my sinker, I'll go down on my snooting. I'll go down to like a 25 kilo or 31 kilo, just lighter than the rest of my trace. So at least if my sinker gets stuck, I don't lose my whole trace. I'll part off on the trace snooting. I mean, on the sinker snooting. So you get the rest of your trace back, rather than if it's all one weight right through. As soon as you hook anything, you can tend to lose everything. So again, just tie your normal knot. This is going on the bottom section now of that swivel. You can see the top one going on the bottom. So this is going to my sinker. And as I said, I'll strip that right across my body again. So full length across, probably about 1.5 meters, a little bit more. And then just tie a loop at the bottom. Just tie a standard loop. Tie that up. And what you're going to do, those guys who don't know, just so your standard, you make that loop at the bottom there. I'll tie one little granny knot in the line, in the sinker line, just again to weaken it a bit. So if it does get hooked, it'll pull tight and part. And then that's obviously, that double goes through the eye of the sinker, and it goes right over the sinker and back up, and it creates a slip knot like that. So it'll be a slip knot on your sinker. So when you get back, you can take your sinker off without having to cut your snooting, and then you can roll it onto your bottom trace. And when you roll onto your bottom trace, for those who don't know, you start at the sinker, and then you wind up to your first hook, clip your hook in, and continue winding up to your last hook and clip your last hook in. So you start at your sinker, you don't start at the top. Okay, let's just finish here. So this will be your bottom hook snoot. Again, bottom hook snoot, I'll fish the same length as the top. That'll coming off that side swivel at the top. So it's 2-hook trace, and
the same size hook again there.
Yeah, with two ninos, and that'll be sort of like a starting trace. If we've got good live baits or even mozzies or mackerel, I'll generally start with my mackerel on the bottom hook with a sard on the top hook. If we're fishing for keelback, again, I'll have my snooting will be about that. Will be my length from shoulder, and then that niner again, offset the niner. Just bend it away slightly. You can see it's offset there. And that'll go on. And I'll start with that trace. So that'll be in the morning early. As soon as it starts getting a bit lighter, what I'll do is and if we're not getting bites, obviously, if it's gone quiet or we're moving around, then what I'll do is I'll shorten up my sinker snoot. So I'll shorten my sinker snoot, which will just, because generally then the fish, as it gets lighter, the fish will tend to move slightly more towards the bottom. So a little bit deeper. So then that sinker snoot, I would cut down to basically the same length as my hook snoot. So the bottom sinker, so that length there, because remember I'm fishing a live bait, so he'll be swimming around. But what I'll do then is I'll then shorten up my sinker snoot, and my sinker snoot will be the same length then as my bottom hook snoot. And that then just brings in the rock cod and cracker. We would generally be sort of feeding a little bit lower down on near the bottom of the reef, if the keelback have gone quiet. So start with that trace, and I'll shorten down. What I'll do then also, as I've done that, I'll shorten then between my hooks, between my two swirls. So I'll shorten that down probably to about 1 meter, just over 1 meter from my shoulder now. So I'll move it in, so my hook from my swivel to my swivel would only be a shorter length now. So that's bringing my top hook now down closer to the bottom as well. And then what I'll do is I'll change from a nano on my top hook. I'll change to an offset chemically sharpened. So like a big gun 8-0, because you can still hook a beck the beck comes along. But what you'll find with with an offset chemically sharpened, it's a slightly smaller overall hook. I mean, you can see that's a 9-0, that's an 8-0, but totally different in size. What it does is it allows you then, if you get big soldiers, or you sort of like medium size to smaller fish coming along, it opens you up to be able to hook those fish. You'll, 1.5 2 kilo soldier will gobble an 8-0. And if you're not hooking them with an 8-0, it means they're probably like half a kilo, or smaller, because soldiers are super aggressive, and you will hook them. If they're bigger than 350, you'll hook them. So that's generally the trace you can play with, and then you would shorten up on your top hook snooting as well. So when you're fishing for reds, I would come down to probably about not too short, because you'll find the smaller reds they're not fussy and slinger. They'll eat a short snoot, but you'll find the bigger reds, they're not big for being stupid. So they still want a nice, pretty looking bait. So I'll fish probably about a 400 to 500 length on the top, still with a skirt, but within an 8-0 a big gun or similar hook. So it doesn't have to be, but an offset. Anivash just asking why an offset. I just find the hookup rate is slightly better on it, especially on the bigger fish. So it just means when it's in their mouth, when they've vacuumed it in, and not necessarily eating through it, the bigger fish vacuum it in. As you're striking, the hook starts sliding, and if you think about it slightly offset, it's gonna catch somewhere a little bit easier than if it just shoots out straight. So it's got a chance of catching his jaw on the outside. And the hookup rate just seems to be there. Yeah, and then like I say, an offset 8-0, but then keep your 6-0 and your 5-0. Generally not going to fish smaller than a 5-0. Even slinger, if they're a reasonable size slinger, you're gonna hook them with a 5-0. Then you can go down to the smaller ones. But that's the sort of hook, the trace that I generally fish with. If you're going to grounds where you're now catching soldiers and slingers and that sort of thing, then again, I would start shortening up to get a little bit closer to the bottom, because you don't want only your big baits at the bottom. You want to keep your sort of second bait and go to probably a 3-hook trace. So your fish still have your big baits at the bottom, and some guys will then even shorten up their sinker to be shorter than their last hook, because fishing for rock cod and that sort of thing, they want that bait, the live bait, sort of right down on the bottom, and then obviously it just opens up rock cod and that sort of thing for you as well. But just make sure that when you make your trace, however long your hook is, so let's just say this is at the bottom. If you're gonna keep your hook length quite long on your bottom, you can't make your next swivel shorter, because if you're going down, you've got to remember, when you're going down, that bottom hook is going to go up. And if you've got a short line now from that swivel to there, that's going to go up above, and it's going to twist around that bait, and then you're going to be fishing with a whole bunch. So again, you'll need to shorten your bottom hook snootings a little bit, but keep it. You got to think like a fish. You got to think, well, if this thing's sitting here and there's a big swivel sitting by my face here and there's a whole lot going on here, I'm not going to be too keen to eat it. If I've got a live bait and he's a reasonable distance away and he's swimming around here, I'm going to come and eat him. So again, you'd shorten up that bottom hook a little bit to probably about 500, and have your live bait there, have your shorter sinker, and then bring it sort of down. So you'd go again sort of like 500 between your swivel, 400 to 500 to your next swivel, 300 snoot, and another 400 and a 300, 400 snoot there. So that would be then your sort of all your mixed bag trace. You store a nice hook set on the bottom. You can keep fishing the 9-0, or you can go to the 8-0 on the bottom. Then you can start putting your cut baits, your flappers, those sort of things. And then you would then work on your next snooting, your second biggest hook, and then your sort of smaller hook on the top. So maybe like your 6-0 there, and then your 5-0 on the top. For your slinger will generally sit up a little bit higher, and they'll come and attack that top bait. You can then also, on one of those smaller hooks, if you've cut off your top hook with the Yamashita, then you can go down to like a smaller Yamashita. So you can fish something like that, like a smaller Yamashita.
Okay.
On one of the hooks, just if you're getting eaten off and your bait gets eaten off, if you're fishing sards and those sort of things, it's always entices them to come back. Like I said earlier, often you'll go down and you'll have 2 pulls, let's just say, and you miss both. So your live bait's gone, your sard's gone, and all of a sudden you go on and you come up and he's on the top hook, he's on the Yamashita, he's eating the glow, just eating that by itself.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a good thing just to keep in the mix, keep in the arsenal. Guys, when it comes to daggers, some guys swear that you cannot put this on when you're fishing for daggers. It's on the night. I've caught daggers with it. I've caught without. But when you're fishing for daggers, if they're a little bit scallum, then you'll run and you'll use a sliding trace. So you fish we'll generally fish. We'll mix it up. So someone will fish with a slightly shorter sinker, but again, like a 2-meter sinker snoot, I think. And then that's running on your main line to a 2-way swivel, and then you're fishing longer hook snootings for dagger. So your hook snooting for your Hillbeck, as I said, would be from my shoulder. I'll add on probably about another 100 on my hook snooting. So across my chest there, I'd add on about another 100 for my hook snooting for daggers. Well, they're a little bit more fickle, and they're also coming and looking, what is this? What's going on here? And that's why generally, if you're not getting a bite and other guys are fishing daggers, if you started with a 2-hook trace, switch straight away to a 1-hook, take the skirt off, go natural, longer snooting, long hook snooting. They like it too much happening around on the trace. Even guys, if you really want to catch decent redfish, big soldiers and that, go to a 1-hook trace. And where I've seen it happen is in a lot of times when you're fishing in inter-clubs or inter-provincials or nationals, whatever it is, and you're fishing IGFA rules, where you're only allowed to fish with 1 hook, you're only allowed to fish with 1 hook. Hey, you catch a lot more quality reds on the same reefs that we fish all the time with a 2-hook and a 3-hook trace. And that's why I'm saying, they don't get big for being stupid. They're quite fussy as well, believe it or not. The guys just think the reds just come and attack. That's the small pack because they're all fighting for a chow. The big dog, he's hanging around and generally a little bit off the reefs on the sides, on the sand. They're hanging around there. You'll see if you're drifting, it's always good if there's not much wind and you're fishing those sort of like reefs that carry a lot of different species on. Just always sort of do that drift. Let yourself drift off it a little bit as well, Look where the showings are. Drift off the reef a little bit as well. And guys, don't be lazy, because a lot of times guys go down the reef, get chowed up. Then you drift off the reef. By the time you've drifted off the reef, you don't have a decent bait on. So now he's not going to eat it. So if you're like coming off the reef, don't be shy to come up quickly, put a decent bait and say, Skip, just give me a chance, go down. Because definitely those big soldiers like to hang around on the sand on the outside of the reef. And so I found there, if you're fishing, I'd fish an 8-0, or 6-0, and then a live mozzie. Really, they love a live mozzie. The smallest one you can find, and then again, like I said, a reasonable length trace, even a running trace, but with about a 400 hook snoot, about a 500 mil hook snoot. And about a 400, 500 sinker. So pretty much same length. Got a picture now. These guys are all swimming on the bottom, picking up, eating off the bottom and that sort of thing. So they're quite low down. You don't want to be too high up. And guys, you'll be surprised how many decent soldiers you get. Like 3 kilos, 3.5 kilo soldiers are hanging out there. So that's something to keep in mind. They love a mozzie. They love a mozzie.
PK, we got a couple of questions coming in here. One from Jeremy Gould and one from Avinash there. With your offset hook, is there a right way to pin the live bait? Can you use circle hooks?
Yeah, so I mean, there's not generally with the offset, there's no right way, because you're going through his top lip, so it's not like fishing for tuna and that sort of thing where you're possibly pinning him behind his head and that sort of thing, which they are saying it should be facing forward. But here, just basically when you're pinning him, if it's a dead bait, you're going straight through the bottom and straight through the top of his head. And remember, when you're pinning a sod, hold his body, don't snap his neck off when you're putting it through. But it's going in between, just there under the mouth, between the gills, and comes up in sort of the middle part of his head, and that's basically going to come up like that. So it doesn't really matter which way it goes. Likewise for a live mackerel or mozzie, and on mozzies, if the fish are feeding, I'll pin bottom and top because his top mouth is a little bit softer. So I'll just go through bottom and top, and he generally stays alive anyway. With a mackerel, then it's just through the top lip, slightly far back, not through his brain, so not between his eyes, but just try and find that hard part that it sits nice that, if he gets a yank, he's not just going to get pulled off. So don't put it too close to the edge of his lip, or put it nicely in there, but not through his brain. Don't kill him. So yeah, no special way there in the offset, just that it's going to go straight up through the top. Yeah.
And Avnesh says, I'm going to put you in the corner here. What's your preference for beck, circle, or jayhook?
No, look, I'm a Kendall man. I've tried circles, and guys, there's nothing wrong with circles. It's just different strokes, different fish. Same on tuna and that sort of thing. I mean, plenty of the top guys fish circle hooks. I love Amagatsu for timing. It just works for me. Until you start missing fish, you're not gonna want to change too soon. And also, I mean, if you get used to fishing one way and it's working for you, that's the thing. I've gone and tried circles, and maybe I'm starting fresh. So whereas with this, I've been fishing, with 9 Kendalls for 40 years. So you know what the bites and when to strike, feel for it. Whereas circle hook is a different way of fishing, and there's a feel for that as well. Yeah. So it's really, I wouldn't. I'm not punting either of them. They both work as well as the guy who operates it. If a guy puts the circle hook down and starts striking, hook up. So it's a lot to do about the angler at the end of the day of how he's fishing, that he's fishing the way he's going to have success.
Yeah, sure. Just quickly before we wrap up, sinkers. It's something that it's probably one of the most vital things to get right with regards to when it comes, especially if there's a bit of current around. Even when there's not current, you don't want to go with something too heavy. What's your advice on that?
Yeah, you're spot on. I mean, again, you want things to look almost as natural as possible, and you also got to be wary that not all fish just feed down. So a lot of time, if the fish are higher up, I think a lot of time with keelback, we actually let down, and they up at maybe like 5 or 10 meters, and you actually let down through them, and then they like swoop down and pick your bait up because you feel your sinker goes light, and you wind and you go on. So I think as light as you can fish while holding the bottom is the best. So again, you'll pick that up when you fish like 10 kilo line and egg for rules and that sort of thing, and lighter rods. You want to fish as light as you can to feel the bite. And you generally then do get more bites. So yeah, I'll normally start with like a 500 gram. I'll start with a 500 gram. That's sort of my go-to size. And then if we're in the slightly shallower water and we can feel there's not much current, then sort of scale down to maybe like a 12 ounce or somewhere around there, and just see, work it out. I mean, what's the lightest you can fish? Because at the end of the day, again, if you're fishing for a dogger with a running trace, if he swims, sorry, not a running trace, if you're fishing for beck and there's dogger around and you're fishing with a fixed trace, if he picks it up and he's playing with the baits and he picks up and he feels like a half kilo sinker, he's going to spit it out, no matter how soft you being on the top, So and I mean, guys, try different things as well. I normally 90% of my fishing I do with a static bait. So in other words, I'll make every effort to keep my sinker on the bottom. So if we're going over swells, and then I won't like lift and drop and lift and drop, so my sinker's going up and down. I'll fish static. So as soon as the boat goes up, I'll let my rod go down. If it comes up, I'll just keep steady pressure on my line. But what you need to do is you need to mix it up a little bit. So hold for like a couple of minutes, maybe no bite, maybe just lift, take 2 winds, set it back down again. You know, the fish might be, see a little bit of movement there and come over. You might be fishing behind the rock on the side of the reef, and the fish. You know, these are all sort of like little nuances that you have to work through. I saw someone was asking earlier about using a sounder and maybe doing something on that. I'll try and do a bit of, fish on the weekend. I'll try and do a bit of live streaming on the weekend with a sounder, because the best way to do it is when you're on the boat with the sounder, with what you're seeing. So, and then I'll talk through, even if I can't live stream, I'll video it, and we can maybe bang it up then on our next weekly wrap when we bring it up.
Yeah, 100%. I think we'll try and probably do the next one at Lawrence. I think Mary's trying to line up, and maybe what we can do is just take a couple of photos of different sort of baits as they sit in the water, so we can pick up sort of different showings, and then also if we can possibly get some different species as well, and where they sit in the water column and that sort of thing. So we'll definitely try that, Avinash, 100%. And thanks for all the questions, really appreciate it. I see my mom's cousin from Dubai from Oman has logged in here and has been watching. He's been smashing fish on this little tinny that he's got out there with, I don't know, I think it's like a 15 or 25 horsepower. Yes, he canes it every time he goes on there. So maybe we'll get a couple of photos and show the boys what you guys do over there, because you guys definitely have what seems to be a very healthy fishery there. But BK, thanks so much for, again, lending your time and your knowledge and that sort of thing. I know a lot of oaks would have learned a hell of a lot just out of this basic. It's a lot of information to take in, and we haven't even touched the surface, you know. So I mean, it's we can maybe chat about the fish finder stuff next episode. We can go into baits, we can go into anchoring. There's just so much to cover when it comes to bottom fishing. So yeah, it's a rich subject.
Awesome.
Lekker. Boys, thanks for tuning in. BK, thank you.
Awesome, guys. Tight lines on the weekend if you manage to get on the water. We'll hopefully be out there, and we'll try some fish on and do a bit of live streaming. Yeah, but thanks for following. Go check out our Go Fish on YouTube. There's a couple of new episodes there, so go check it out. Like, subscribe, it, guys. It all helps. It makes us keep coming back. Thanks.
100%. Thanks, boys. Shark man. Have a good evening.